So by this point, everybody should know that the best way to improve your art skills is to put a lot of time in, but that does pose a problem if you're maybe just getting started and maybe you've got a day job, or maybe you're a parent, you have a lot of responsibilities. It's not an easy thing to make time every single day. And so I want to talk a little bit about some strategies that might help you. I don't know that I have solutions because I don't know your specific situation, but maybe we can work through some things, and maybe some of my suggestions might at least help you to consider things you hadn't considered before. And that's all I can really hope for. I can't write a schedule for you because I'm not you. If I were you, you'd be me. And if you were me, then we wouldn't be having this conversation. Okay. So anyway, before we get into it though, remember to subscribe. Statistics have shown that people who subscribe to my channel are generally thought of as more attractive, more successful, and certainly more charming. That opens a heck of a lot of opportunities. So subscribe and ring that bell and get in on the good life like we got going over here, baby. Okay, so let's talk about how do you make time to study. And first and foremost, I want to say that if your time is limited, then what you're studying is of ultra importance. Do not spend what little time you have drawing in circles, literally, not growing. And so the thing I want to emphasize, and I've said this many times, but I'm going to say it again for the new viewers, focus on your fundamentals. Write down a curriculum. If you don't have somebody to create a curriculum for you, well, I have a couple of curriculums for you, depending on what your skill level is. If you're brand new and you're just learning fundamentals, then you should check out my easy art lessons. That'll have you drawing cool stuff within a matter of 20 days. And if you're looking to get professional level concept art work, say in the video game industry, which is what I've done for 20 years, well, I have a curriculum for you in that regard as well over on my Gumroad channel. But if you're like, well, I don't want to pay you money, Trent. I want to learn on my own. I want to figure it out. I don't mind taking an extra 5 years to figure it out. Okay, well then you got to create your own curriculum. And if you don't create a curriculum, you're going to be practicing the same things over and over and wondering why you're not improving. Because just making time to draw doesn't make you better. You absolutely have to be drawing in ways and developing in ways that are improving your skill set. And what that means is paying a lot of attention to where you were before and what you need to work on, and maybe something that some other artists are doing. Watch some of my videos where I'm doing studies. This is a very valuable way for you to develop your material rendering, your lighting. It's a very powerful way for you to understand your tools better. Think of understanding and studying tools as a separate thing from understanding and studying actual painting skills and fundamentals. It's one thing to know how to drive a car. It's something else entirely to know how to drive that car at peak performance in a race, for example, okay? Not that I'm encouraging you to go street racing or anything. I'm just saying as a metaphor, okay? Metaphorically. Another thing that I almost feel like I gotta say as a disclaimer is, like, quite literally, a lot of what we end up doing is a distraction. We have to really be honest with ourselves and ask ourselves, are we optimizing our schedule and our time? And this is something you will struggle with your whole life unless if you're kind of neurotic or very analytical, okay? So it's okay. This is not a criticism, but oftentimes we find that we don't have time. We say, oh, I don't have time. But when in reality, it's that we don't want to sit down and put in the work. And again, not a criticism of you. I don't know your situation, but I found that this was true with myself as well. I always felt like, oh, I've got to be producing. I got to be making new stuff. I can't stop to do the studies. I can't stop to do the fundamentals. So I tried to integrate the studying into the pieces that I'm doing. So I would always do something. This is a kind of a trick I've talked about for years. It really helped me. I try to do every drawing I do. I try to do about like 80% of what I'm already good at and 20% of something new. And a good example of that might be, well, like I'm really good at drawing characters in these action poses, right? But I don't often spend a lot of time on expression. So I might really challenge myself to, give that character a unique expression. And when I say challenge myself, I mean literally pull up some reference, look at myself in the mirror, put my energy of studying into a distinct point in the drawing. But the rest of the drawing is stuff that I'm already really confident at. It's stuff that I know I already got a good grasp on because I did study basics of perspective and I studied basics of anatomy and lighting and rendering and construction instruction, okay? So stick with those foundational things. If you don't have anything that you're good at yet, you got to be going back to those fundamentals. And that's kind of some of the things I was just talking about, and things like what you'd find in my easy art lessons. I also have a lot of free challenges here on my YouTube channel. So do a search for my name and then, art challenges, and you'll find several of them. But distractions, it's so easy to get caught up in just doom scrolling on Twitter. I've gotten completely off of Twitter pretty much, or schedule it. Like schedule a time if your business or you like something you're doing has to require that you're posting your new artwork on social media. Pick like 1 or 2 social media sites and just make that your focus, but only post like during a specified time each day. Okay, don't let yourself get caught up in just browsing and perusing, and before you know it, these systems are designed to be addictive. YouTube Shorts are designed to be addictive. My videos are designed to be addictive, but ideally with what I do here on my YouTube channel this is something you can be listening to while you're drawing. In fact, if you're not drawing right now, what are you doing? You don't have to be watching me. I'm here to give you some advice and new ways of thinking that might help you to break out of cycles that you're in. And that kind of exposure is a good thing. But another benefit of subscribing to my channel also, by the way, you can just click one of my playlists and just listen for hours on things that might change some of the ways that you've been thinking, or add something new to your repertoire. Maybe you just stop it for a moment to like check out, well, how did he do that one thing? Or how's he doing that one trick? Or what brush is he using there? That sort of a thing. But don't let it become something that's distracting you from being productive. I try to make my videos kind of almost podcast style, and some of them are quite meaty. In fact, the one I just recorded is like 20 minutes. This one might go equally as long. But the point is that the things that you choose to listen to and absorb can sometimes pull you away from your goals. And just listening to a podcast or just listening to something like this isn't going to make you better. You have to actually be applying it. And that means, like, a good example would be right now. Like, what are you working on? And is there something that you are already doing? Like, write it down. Like, is there something that you're doing in your current drawing that you're excelling at, and you can actually quantify and say like, yeah, this is like, I'm really good with these things. I'm confident with like those elements of my drawing, perspective or lighting or whatever. And then identify just one thing in the drawing you're doing right now that you're not satisfied with. Write that down and then do a quick search. Ideally, I cover a lot of topics, so you could say Trent, Kaniuga, perspective, for example, if perspective, you're challenged with perspective. I have tons of videos on perspective. Just focus on that one thing. And maybe while you're drawing the drawing you're on, if you're working digitally, you can just paint over something you've already done, and you can work on that one challenging thing for this one painting, this one drawing. And if you're applying the lesson and immediately to what it is that you're currently doing, then you're absorbing it into your visual vocabulary, you're absorbing it into your vernacular, your language, your drawing toolkit, okay? And I've often referred to exactly what I'm talking about as your toolkit. It's something where you know exactly how to solve the problems that are right in front of you because you've done these studies. You've gone out and you've bought the tools. You've gone out and you've prepared your knowledge and understanding of how to use those tools in various circumstances and situations. And that's a lot of what my channel is. So yeah, you can just subscribe and put me on a playlist, and it'll be something that can be in the background because you don't want to get distracted too much. Now, I do put on some things, like for instance, I've made conscious decisions in some cases to skip playing some new video game releases. I love to play video games, and I've been an artist for so long. It's like I feel like I've earned some time to be able to play at least one game a month, but that's not nearly as many as that are coming out. So what I've decided to do is I've just decided to watch somebody else play through some of these games that are coming out. So I may not get to play them, but I get to enjoy them in the background while I'm being productive, while I'm working, while I'm getting things done. And that's the part of the painting that's the 80% that I said I'm already good at. And then I'll pause the video that I'm watching, or the TV show that I'm watching, or the podcast that I'm listening to, and really focus on improving the particular part of what it is that I'm working on if I notice any flaws. A big part of studying is noticing what you're doing that is not working and giving it your focus and your attention, digging into your toolkit, developing your toolkit so that whenever you can identify those problems, you can come in with the right tool to fix the problem. You got yourself solutions. And that is infinite, that's endless, that's a constantly evolving process. And your whole career, you're going to go through that. Your whole experience of being an artist, your whole life is going to be that. You're going to constantly be refining and optimizing your process, your tools, your techniques, your philosophy, your psychology. It's kind of infinite and endless. So don't get anxious about like, oh, I'm not there yet. A big mistake that I think a lot of beginners run into is they feel that they need to be acing it a lot faster or else they get discouraged or frustrated. And it's like, it's okay to begin at an earlier level. It's okay to not be amazing right out of the gate. Nobody's amazing right out of the gate. Okay. But the more you tune your awareness towards what I was just talking about, that construction, that circuit board in your mind of like, okay, I can identify what the problem is here. I can write it down, and then I can say, okay, well, how do I research how to improve at that problem so that I can fix that problem, thereby improving your toolkit until you've got this master toolkit of techniques and skills that you can use to solve any art problem that you come across, whether it's design focused or whether it's art focused, you know. And this is true as you get beyond just the fundamentals and you start to dig into the more minute details of like specifics industries, like doing a character sheet for animation, which is a very different process than, for example, like painting a background for a 2D animation. These are very different things. And there's different skill sets and details involved in both of those different skill sets. But getting back to what I was talking about before, that's about focusing on your content of what you're studying when you do have time to study. But let's say that you only have, 15 minutes a day to practice, and that's just during your lunch hour. Well, you could take a sketchbook to your work. Is there a time during your lunch hour where maybe you're socializing when you could be sitting there drawing? Is there a time, like I started carrying a notebook to the gym. So when I'm in the sauna, I'm writing story. I'm writing notes and I'm designing levels for the new Twilight Monk game. I'm trying to multitask while simultaneously not sacrificing what it is that I'm doing. It doesn't require a lot of brain power to be sitting in a sauna or running on a treadmill. So if I get a dialogue or a note or a script idea or a level design loop or something, I will sketch that down. I have the tools with me at all times to be able to sketch it out and write it down. So in some cases, you can multitask a little bit. In some cases, you could maybe even make notes to yourself on your drive. You could just hit record on your phone or get yourself a portable recorder or something and plan out strategies. A big part of this is just being mindful of how you're growing and whether or not you are growing, and consider new strategies on how you could grow more, utilizing the time that you have. So if we can eliminate our distractions, then maybe we can maximize more hours of our day that we can give to our studies. And if we can give more hours in the day to our studies, maybe we can multitask some of the things that we have to accomplish. Another good example of this might be, let's say if you're a teenager, maybe one of your part-time jobs, you have different opportunities for different types of part-time jobs. Maybe there's a part-time job that you could take where you can actually sit and sketch while you're doing that job. Like when I was a teenager, I didn't have a lot of the opportunities you have for part-time jobs. But like, for instance, if you're customer service or something like that, maybe you could be sketching while you're doing customer service for people over the phone, or that's a very vague kind of an answer, but there are many jobs that you could be doing where you are available. It just requires your voice or your mind, but you can still be sketching, you can still be practicing drawing while you're doing those other jobs. Or if it's a kind of a job that gives you a lot of breaks, for example, something, I had a friend of mine who was a gas station attendant for a while, and he just, not attendant, he worked in the gas station. But my point is, he had a lot of time where he's just sitting there. So he'd just doodle a lot. He was on the graveyard shift, so he'd work from 10 p.m. till 6 a.m., and not a lot of customers during that time. There's a little bit of time to draw. You could take a little notebook with you, doodle out characters, come home every single day with 3 or 4 new little sketchbook pages full of character designs and story ideas and such. Are there opportunities in your day, in your daily life right now, where you could be utilizing more of your time to just train yourself to almost automatically draw? And then when you can give yourself conscious energy, if you can, because you don't want to be looking up studies of like how to draw while you're doing somebody else's job. You're paid to be an employee and provide a service for, like, that's a job. You know, you can't let yourself be distracted with every job. If you're working at a grocery store or working with customers directly in person, you don't want to be looking distracted. You'll get fired from that job, okay? So I don't want to confuse you with that. I'm trying to say, like, maybe there are jobs that you could do that do allow you some downtime and time that you could be sketching or doodling or coming up with interesting characters or sketches. And then when you do have time in the evening, watch a video that gives you maybe some new tutorials, some new techniques that you could be practicing, something that you can carry with you. I try to make most of my easy art lessons, for example, and most of the fundamentals that I teach them, they can all be done on paper for the most part until you graduate into being ready to start dealing with things like color theory and whatnot. And maybe those are things, who knows? I mean, if you've got yourself an iPad or you've got yourself a little tablet that you can draw on or paint in, then maybe that's something that you could carry with you. And if you find yourself like, maybe you got to ride the bus, you know, or maybe you got to, like, you know, commute or something like that. Maybe there are ways that you can be influencing what you're doing and what you're thinking, how you're thinking about what you're learning during that period of time. So it's important to be asking yourself all the time, where can I find ways to get a little bit more time to effectively study in the most effective way that I can? This is definitely one of those things that people could start to stack up as another excuse. A lot of people could say, well, you know, I never found enough time. I had to work an 8-hour day, you know, 5 days a week, you know, and always behind on my bills. But, you know, hey, you got the latest iPhone, you got like new computers, you got like expensive TVs, game consoles, and maybe even in those evenings, you're just socializing because you're a social person. Maybe if you're going out and socializing, you could be sitting there drawing. And a lot of times, a lot of things I just said, they're just excuses. It's like you could have been utilizing that time in multitasking. If you're a very social person, then you got to ask yourself, well, maybe I could be socializing with people who also like to draw. Maybe I could be socializing with people who are also doing art. And some things like Discord and some things like social online communities can be a bit more of a distraction than they are helpful to your productivity. I've also, by the way, it is important that you do keep and maintain your social skills too, because I've been working at studios in the past where I was a super productive guy, but I wasn't necessarily Mr. Social Guy. And I've also been at other studios when I was even younger where I was Mr. Social Guy, not super productive guy. And those both have their advantages and disadvantages, you know, but certainly whatever your personality type is, there's probably somewhere in that process where you could say, well, I'm maybe going to work a few less hours at this job. Is it possible that maybe you could get a job that's closer to your home so you spend less time commuting? That's one thing. Maybe there are ways you could reduce your bills. And that's another factor, by the way. A lot of people will get caught up in an expensive lifestyle, and then they've got to work so many hours at this job that they hate that they're never able to break free from the job. It's a catch-22. That's the chicken egg situation, is self-induced, where, oh, I got to have the latest TV. I got to have the latest technology. I got to have the latest tools. I got to have the latest clothes. I got to constantly go out shopping, or I got to keep, you know, spending money on other people. Or in some cases, we get trapped in a job we don't like, and then we say, oh, well, we don't have time for our own needs. Well, maybe there are ways that you could reduce your expenditures so that you can, and that could be like, you know, moving to a smaller apartment, or living in investing properly, or living in, getting a roommate, or renting out a part of your home. You know, there are a lot of options depending on where you live, that maybe there are ways. And again, everybody's got different lifestyle situation right now. I can't tell you what those things are, but these are a few ideas of just things that might spark you to think, like, well, maybe there are ways I could reduce my cost of living so that I could switch my job over to a part-time job, or maybe one that's a little bit closer with a shorter commute so that I could have more time, or I could start taking the bus to work or to school or wherever. And that gives me a little bit more time to just sit and draw. And there's always some way that we can adjust our schedule. Shoot, man, at one point I stopped eating lunch and I was just eating one meal a day because I found that lunchtime was taking up too much of my day. I needed to be working. I needed to be working on my project. And that kind of thing will require sacrifice. That's the one thing I really want to drive home with this video. If there's anything worth doing, it's going to take sacrifice. And we have to be honest with ourselves and ask ourselves, you know, how much do we really want this? And are we willing to make the sacrifices necessary to get it? And that doesn't mean doing this forever. It's not a forever thing, but it certainly needs to become a part of your personality to have that drive, or else I don't know that it's the best career choice for you to make anyway. If you can't find the drive in yourself to keep wanting to do it, then you've either got to flip your psychology, and I just recently did a video about how to change your psychology about success and failure in art. If you're not able to do that, you might find yourself just falling back on something that's easier, like finding a different kind of a job and keeping art just your hobby, which also, by the way, ain't such a horrible thing. The realities of being an artist are that sometimes you're drawing and painting a lot of stuff you don't want to be drawing and painting. You're redrawing and repainting things that you don't necessarily want to be redrawing and repainting. It's not an easy career path, but it does get easier if you do it for long enough. So again, this video did turn out to be a very long one, but I certainly hope that it gives you some insights into maybe some strategies that you could take to pursue a little bit more effective time usage for your studies with art. And if you do need some help with that, again, I want to encourage you to check out some of my workshops over on Gumroad. I've helped a lot of people with developing their skill and getting work as an artist. And don't forget to subscribe. And I am here fairly frequently, almost every week. So don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you then. All right, ciao. Dude, what the heck is Twilight Monk? Which is the first book to buy? I get this question a lot, so I wanted to clarify. If you don't know already, yes, I've worked on many successful video games, but now I'm making illustrated novels and art books. And the order that you should pick them up in if you're interested in the world of Twilight Monk is to start with the book called The World of Twilight Monk. This is an illustrated art book, but it features a lot of backstory on characters and locations and populations and the different cities and what they do with those cities. And this is the groundwork for all these adventures that I'm about to tell in the illustrated novels. Now, which illustrated novel should you start with if you want to pick up the Twilight Monk series and start reading about these characters? I highly recommend you start with The Secrets of Kung Fulio. The Secrets of Kung Fulio has 70 illustrations by myself and Danny Kong. It's a 50,000 word book that was written by myself and Chris Krubik. It has a lot of kung fu fantasy adventure action. It is the story of a reluctant teenage hero who has to overcome this bully who's trying to kick him out of town, basically. But he kind of totally stinks at kung fu, so he's going to need to build some alliances, and he's going to need a shortcut to ultra secret Kung Fulio mastery. It's got comedy, it's got action, it's a buddy story too, so lots of heart. Just read the reviews, man. People are loving this book. And yes, the illustrated novel series is a series, in fact. So you can look forward to The Return of the Ancients, which is coming out in illustrated form later this year. You can pick up The World of Twilight Monk and Secrets of Kung Fulio, as well as many of the other comic books and illustrated novels that I've written and drawn over at aquaticmoon.com. All orders are delivered and fulfilled by Amazon, so you can read reviews and get that prime shipping, baby. I can't wait to share these Kung Fu adventure stories with you, and I hope you'll come along for the ride. I'd love to read your reviews as well. So dudes, that's it for me on this one. I'll catch you in the next video. Ciao.